This video is about Verne Troyer. I'm going in depth into the death of Verne Troyer, most known for portraying the character Mini-Me in the Austin Powers films. Now, he was born in Sturgis, Michigan in January 1st of 1969, and he had two other siblings. He once said, "My parents never treated me any differently than my other average-sized siblings." He said he used to have to carry wood, feed the cows and pigs and farm animals. The area of Sturgis is a very rural area. And I find it kind of interesting that he was raised Amish. I don't know how long his parents stayed in the Amish, what was it, faith or lifestyle, but apparently when he was young, they still were, and they ultimately left the faith. I've always been really fond of people that were different, very special people, they used to call them. And Verne was somebody that really I gravitated towards because he was just a fascinating looking person and an interesting as a human being person. Seems like a pretty decent guy. Now, the Little People of America, which is the organization I think Billy Barty was a founding member, was the president of for the longest time. I think he was the founder of it, which is a sort of representation or not a union, but a group for people who were little people. It was sort of an organization, we'll say. And the Little People of America contacted him to appear as a stunt double in the movie Baby's Day Out. And then he sort of people liked him and he could do what he could do in films, mostly stunt work. And he was in Men in Black, Jingle All the Way, and My Giant. He was asked to be in the Austin Powers film, the first one, as Mini-Me, who was Dr. Evil's little sort of miniature protege, his sort of clone almost. And after the first Austin Powers film, they made his role larger to give him more screen time. In all, he made 3 of Austin Powers films. He also was in the Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Now, Mike Myers said, as written, Mini-Me was almost a prop, but he said he brought it up off the page better than written. We just ended up giving him more and more stuff to do. He was in music videos for Moby, Madonna, and Ludacris, as well as more. And as a person, he was a huge sports fan. He had his own YouTube channel, which was very interesting because he talked about life as, known as Austin Powers and life as a little person.
One of the biggest pet peeves that I have is just because I'm small, people think that they could come up to me and tap me on the head. I'm not a lap dog. I'm a person. So please, we were waiting in line to get in and out, and a car cut in line. We were sitting on the street because the line was so long. And they actually went around us and cut in front of all of us. I travel, I'm sitting on the plane, and I don't sit as high as everybody. And they walk by, and somebody's gonna sit in my row, which that's where their seat is. But they go to stick their bag up in the overhead and lean in right to my face, and it's their crotch.
He became a sort of a personality. He was on a show called The Surreal Life, which was a reality show that put these famous people together in one place. Ron Jeremy, Tammy Baker, and Mini-Me or Verne Troyer. In that show, it became quite obvious he had issues with substance abuse, alcoholism, and Verne was an alcoholic, and it ultimately led to his demise. It was a very public demise, actually. He had been in rehab and out of rehab, and the press were following him, monitoring him, basically. They when he was on a plane, somebody reported that he ordered champagne on a plane. And one day he was going to the liquor store near his house in North Hollywood, and the press were there, or, one of the tabloids, and they spoke to one of the people working in the liquor store and said that he would come in and buy like a $22 bottle of Absolute vodka. And another time he went in, a woman came out and put a 12-pack of beer in his back seat for him because he couldn't carry it. So well documented, kind of stalked by the media because, everybody loves a good downfall. It sells the tabloids. and television, like The Surreal Life. It was really sad to actually see those. And actually, he had a sex tape. He had a girlfriend that sold a sex tape, which there you are. I find that, well, it's gross when people do that to other people. And, but yeah, yeah. So I've never met Verne. I had, but my friend Bridget Marquardt, who was a Playboy model, I knew her from the Girls Next Door. We met back when I did an episode of the Girls Next Door, and we've stayed in touch. And Holly, I know Holly, and I've met Kendra a few times. But Bridget and I are friends, and she spent a little bit of time with Verne. I don't know how in depth it was, but I had the opportunity to speak with her about Verne. I asked her a couple of questions about Verne, and this is what she had to say.
Did you ever know Verne Troyer? This is mini-me now. That's sort of one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about. And he was up there, wasn't he?
Yeah, a lot. He was at all the parties. He had a wife. I think it was his wife or a girlfriend named Genevieve that used to come up all the time, too.
And what was your take on him? How did some people are up there as just lecherous, just straight up leches, but what was your take on him?
He was always nice. As far as I knew, I didn't spend tons of time with him or anything like that, but there's some crazy stories about him doing some things. I've heard a story about a bunch of girls getting with him in the grotto.
Oh God, he probably couldn't go in the water though. You know what I mean?
Well, not in the water, but there were. If you've been in the grotto, there are these.
Oh, little passageways or something.
Not passageways, but there's these bedding kind of in there on the sides, like places to lay and hang out.
I wish I would have gone in there. I wish I would have got a peek at that. I really do.
So yeah, when I say the grotto, I don't mean in the actual water. Yeah.
Oh, but it's never anything nasty about him. You've always heard good. He did do a sex tape. There is a mini-me sex tape.
I think I remember something about that.
It's fascinating. I mean, I would be mortified if that came out, if you did something and you just don't do it. If you want that stuff out, don't. And so, but there was a girl, I don't know what their relationship was, but that had been humiliating for him. But he struggled with drinking. And did you see any of that business? He was.
No, I mean, other than just stories that I heard, like I said, having crazy stuff going down in the grotto with a bunch of different girls. And then I know that on The Surreal Life, which we actually went for one of the filmings of The Surreal Life, when Corey Feldman was getting married, we went to that whole thing. And Verne Troyer was one of the people on that show. And I know in that show he peed in the corner or something in the house or
yeah, there were no holds barred on that show. It was he was an alcoholic, but I mean to a level that was you cannot consume what he did. And they had him. He was a mobility scooter that he just drove into the wall. And yeah, that show crossed a couple of lines a few times, I think, but that's what they signed up for, warts and all.
So as I mentioned, his downfall as drinking became tabloid fodder. Every time he did anything, he was somebody sold it or reported to one of the tabloids. And he drove it actually in a specially equipped Mercedes 320. And that was what they saw a woman loading the beer in when he was stopped at the liquor store near his store or his home.
Hey guys, welcome to my driveway. It's not much, but as you can see, I got all my whips out here. Let's go ahead and start with the Audi S5. It's supercharged. I had it lowered just so it would handle a little bit better. And I guess you're probably wondering how I drive. So let me show you that. Okay, as you can see, I have a big pillow that I sit on. And then if you could look underneath, I don't know if you could see it, but I have extensions coming up off the pedals up to my feet, so I drive just like everybody else.
His issue with alcohol was very well known, and he suffered from depression, and he often had thoughts of annihilation, I guess you could say. And that was fairly well known as well. Now I'm going to show you some of this footage of his home. Unfortunately, when I took this footage, I had a camera that didn't, the function on it that was to level it out. I know there's a stabilized, wasn't working on that camera. I had to get it fixed. So it's a bit jumpy, but you could see his home that he lived in North Hollywood on Teasdale. It was April 3rd of 2018 that Verne Troyer dialed 911 from his home in North Hollywood. And he said that he wanted to die. He would repeat those words over and over again into the phone. And also when they picked him up in an ambulance and took him to the hospital. And Verne himself said in one of his videos, as you know, I've battled alcohol addiction in the past, and while it's not always been an easy fight, I will continue fighting day by day. But that day, he had too much. And the 55-pound Verne Troyer died on April 21st, 2018, pronounced dead at 11:27 a.m. Now, I have with me Verne Troyer's autopsy report, and I was going to read some of it to you. It says that, well, first of all, he'd been in the hospital before he'd been in the hospital for a lengthy time before he died. So it wasn't at the moment, mysterious death, if you know what I mean. So this is the investigator's report. On April 21st, 2018 at 19:19 hours, registered nurse Kaylee reported this apparent self-inflicted death to coroner Clerk K. Sloan. It was reported that the decedent, Verne, was taken to the hospital for alcohol intoxication and was admitted on the 3rd of April of 2018. He reportedly went into respiratory failure and became vent dependent, life support ventilator. The decedent was pronounced at the hospital. The decedent has a reported history of dwarfism and chronic alcoholism. It was reported that the decedent apparently called 911 himself, saying that he was happy to leave this planet right now as he was on the phone. He just wanted to. He kept repeating it. It was reported that he kept repeating it and in the emergency room. When the decedent arrived at the hospital, his alcohol level was reportedly over 300. Now, I wrote down some information about that. And actually, I'll probably get to that when I get to that moment. I wrote down some details about that. 300. He reportedly came into the hospital approximately 1 year ago for the same thing, for alcoholism, alcohol poisoning. There was no note found. The decedent reportedly had intentions of doing that to himself in the past, of ending it. And it was known at the time of the call, which the police department was handling the case. There was no other further information reported. And the detective says, I received this case for investigation from Lieutenant Kim on the 21st of April, 2018. Supervisor forensic attendant, the name's unnecessary, transferred the decedent from the hospital to the Forensic Science Center at 10:20 p.m. A criminal history search for the decedent showed no prior arrests on file. The case was originally moded as a self-inflicted, and after review of informant statements, it was changed to an accident. So the place of injury was at that home. Place of death was at the hospital on Van Owen Street in Van Nuys, California. Now, the informant witness statements, the medical record and the Form 18 had the following information. The decedent was brought from his residence into the hospital by ambulance on the 2nd of April, 2018. A urine toxicology test was completed at the hospital on the 2nd, showing alcohol level greater than 300. Despite life-saving measures, the decedent was pronounced dead on the 21st. That's like 19 days later at 11:27 a.m. by the doctor. The decedent was reported medical history of alcohol abuse and depression. Now, the investigator says, I conducted a telephone interview with the decedent's father, Verne Troyer's father, and he stated the following information. The decedent was not married and did not have any adult children. He was not known to use any illicit drugs. Everything was legal. The alcohol, completely legal. It just, there you are. It's just interesting how people are like, so harping about smoking, and all these other illegal drugs, but alcohol, which kills probably a lot of people a year, it sort of gets a free pass because anyway, the decedent did have a history of alcohol abuse and was reportedly completed time at a treatment center approximately 1 year ago. He had no known medical history. I'm not sure what that means. He was taking prescription medication, but the family did not know what they were being prescribed for. He did have a primary doctor. The decedent had a medical history of depression, but was reportedly not seeking any medical treatment. He had no known prior attempts at ending his own life. There was no scene investigation by the coroner because it happened in the hospital, and he'd been in the hospital for a lengthy period of time, so there was no reason to do all of that. The body examination. A 49-year-old Caucasian male adult dwarf with blue eyes and brown hair. He was seen unshaven with apparent natural teeth. There was a hospital identification band around the decedent's left arm. There was a red band seen on the decedent's left arm. A hospital identification tag was seen to the decedent's right arm. A bandage was seen to the decedent's left foot, left arm, right thigh, back of the head, and buttocks. An intravenous line was seen coming from his right thigh. There were no other medical appliances seen. Abrasions were seen to the decedent's genitals, right hand, mouth, tongue, and the back of his head. Purple discoloration was seen to the decedent's arms. There were no other obvious evidence of trauma. A mole was seen to the decedent's right chest. Tattoos were seen to the decedent's arms, left chest, right leg, and back. A scar was seen to the decedent's right abdomen. There were no deformities seen. He was positively identified by his driver's license issued by the DMV as Verne J. Troyer, date of birth, January 1st, 1969. And his father was notified of the death by hospital death personnel on the 21st of April. Confirmed notification with him on the 21st April. The decedent was not married and did not have any adult children. Unknown if, so they talked about no autopsy reports available at that time. Now, the Troyer family did not object to an autopsy being performed. So one was performed on the 22nd of April at 11:58 a.m. External examination. And also it has a diagnosis of dwarfism, although that's quite obvious. The body is identified by ankle bands and toe tags and is that of an unembalmed, refrigerated adult male Caucasian who appears about the reported age of 49 years. The body weighs 55 pounds and measures 32 inches and appears well nourished. Tattoos are present and identified as diagrammed on Form 20. Rigor mortis has presumably been altered. Livor mortis is posterior, meaning he was laying on his back, dependent and nearly fixed. The head has short brown hair. Frontal and vertex balding is present. Mustache is present. Patchy facial hair stubble is noted. An examination of the eyes, they were blue and focal drying. Upper and lower teeth are present. Dentures are not present. The skin of the neck is unremarkable, and the neck is without abnormality to range of motion testing. There are no palpable fractures of the chest. The abdomen appears mildly distended, but without a palpable fluid wave. Genitalia are those of an adult male. The penis appears circumcised. Scrotal and soft tissue edema is present. The extremities show no abnormal mobility, non-therapeutic punctures, or needle tracks. So nothing. with regards to that. Evidence of therapeutic intervention. The following are present and in proper location. Intravenous line at the right groin. There are no signs of recent surgical procedures. There is evidence of old surgeries. Abdominal scars are present and the appendix is absent. There has not been post-mortem intervention for organ procurement. Evidence of traumatic injury. There are no fatal blunt force or penetrating traumatic external or internal injuries present. Clothing. The body was not clothed and there was no clothing because he had been in the hospital. His neck organs are removed and block with the tongue. No lesions are present, nor is trauma of the gingiva, lips, and oral mucosa demonstrated. Prominent drying of the anterior tongue and lips is noted. There is no edema of the larynx. The hyoid bone, larynx, and superior horns of the thyroid cartilage are without fractures. No hemorrhage is present in the adjacent throat organs. Investing fascia, strap muscles, thyroid, or visceral fascia. There are no preverbitral fascial hemorrhages. The tongue, when sectioned, shows no trauma. The chest, abnormal cavity. Remember, this is public record. I just want to clarify that. This is public record. In the state of California, autopsy reports are public record. So some people may call it an invasion of privacy. Okay. That's fair. However, it's public record. It's like going in the library. It's just different subject matter. The pleural cavities contain no fluid, blood, or adhesions. The breasts are examined in the usual manner and show no abnormalities. A supernumerary nipple is present on the left. So he had a third nipple. The organs of the abdominal cavity have a normal arrangement. Cardiovascular system, the major branches of the aorta show no abnormality. Within the pericardial sac, there is a minimal amount of serous fluid. The heart weighs 210 grams. It is a normal configuration. There is no significant arteriosclerosis of the major coronary arteries. Respiratory system, secretions and edema fluid are present in the lower bronchial passages. There is no apparent obstruction. The mucosa is intact and mildly congested. Sectioning through the lung reveals no focal lesions or masses. Gastrointestinal system, the esophagus is intact throughout. The stomach is not distended. It contains an estimated 10 cc of tan pink fluid. No active bleeding is present. Tablets and capsules cannot be discerned in the stomach. The appendix that's been already addressed was not there. Endocrine system, the thyroid is unremarkable. The adrenal glands are unremarkable. The pituitary gland is unremarkable. Special senses, the eyes are not dissected. The middle and inner ear are not dissected. Histologic sections, that's tissue, representative sections from various organs are preserved in 2 storage jars containing 10% formalin. Representative sections of the viscera are submitted. Toxicology, bile, blood, liver tissue, stomach contents have been submitted to the lab. No screen was requested secondary to hospitalization of greater than 24 hours. Photography, at-scene photos are not available. He's in the hospital. Photographs have been taken prior to and during the course of the autopsy. Photographs taken tableside include the Y incision and reflected scalp to demonstrate no trauma. Radiology, the body is fluoroscoped and full body x-rays are taken, 24 of them. So that's basically medical imaging using x-rays to create a continuous image of the inside of his body. Now, the final opinion, this 49-year-old man died due to sequelae of alcohol intoxication, which he had a history of. I'll just say it was part of his history. It wasn't a surprise. It was on par with some of his history. The urine toxicology screen performed during hospitalization was negative. A blood alcohol level performed on the 2nd of April at 2130 when he was first brought in, reported as 300 milligrams, and further quantification was not performed. Postmortem toxicology was not performed due to prolonged hospitalization, and admission blood specimens were not available. So the 300 milligrams. Now that I was looking that up in comparison, and I can't find anything lower than representative of a 100-pound person. So there were alcohol levels and weights of people and how it affects people. And the lowest weight I could find was 100 pounds. And at that point, it was the result of 8 drinks on a 100-pound person. That's a lot. And for a 50-pound person, it would have been even more than that. So it was potentially fatal. It was ultimately fatal. Respiratory depression happens at that time. Coma could happen at that time. It is considered fatal to have that amount of alcohol in your system. The decedent reportedly made intentions or ideations of ending it. There is a reported history of depression and chronic alcohol use with recent relapse. Based on the history and circumstance as currently known, the matter of death is on his own. No mystery, no one else involved. Substance abuse, basically. And let's see what I can find here. The tattoos. He had a mole. Well, he had a mole on his right chest. I think that would be the circular mole would be considered the nipple, the third nipple. That makes sense. He had a right shoulder, he had a skull, a left shoulder, he had a cross, and with a yin-yang symbol on it. And his place of death was Valley Presbyterian Hospital. His liver, GB, liquid and sludge. Interesting. No, vocal lesions on his pancreas. Well, that's something bladder empty, normal genitalia. Talking about the pink liquid in his stomach, fluid in his stomach. His brain marked soft and pliable. And those were his tattoos. I said that one already. And here's a diagram of, I marked his tattoos on here. He was identified with toe tags. There were 2 toe tags on him, yellow band on his left ankle, a tattoo on his right sort of ankle or calf kind of tattoo. There are more tattoos than was mentioned earlier. Lividity. He had a heart tattoo on his, it looked like on his, right about here, a tattoo of a heart. I'm surprised these weren't noted before on the other parts of it. No jewelry in his ears, but pierced. Hospital band on his left arm. Punctures, they're noting it at right about here, so that might be, I think there's an artery there, and I believe that might be some sort of IV maybe. There are punctures elsewhere like that. Skin breakage on his knuckles. And they did a lot of toxicology. And actually, they did a lot of looking for viruses. Coronavirus, none. Rhinovirus, influenza. I mean, it's just, they detected, or I should say they tested for a lot of respiratory issues. A lot. Influenza, respiratory virus. They're just going into a lot of respiratory stuff. I guess it might have, yeah. And I think that contributed. Nasal, not detected. Nasal swab, influenza. A lot of these, wow. Negative for influenza. Respiratory panel. You know what I just remembered? When I was talking about Bridget a little bit earlier, I did meet Verne, and it was at one of those autograph shows, and I stood in line to meet him, and he was just a really nice guy. I mean, I have nothing to add to it, except I did meet him, and I got a photo with him, and he was a really nice guy. Now, earlier this year, my sister and I last year, drove from Anchorage, Alaska to Michigan, Detroit, just outside of Detroit. And I think it took us a total of 10 days. And the last day was when we visited Verne Troyer's grave. Oh, well, I'm going ahead of myself a little bit. Now, Mike Myers was on a talk show. And apparently there was a funeral for Verne Troyer, although I can find nothing about a Los Angeles funeral. And he said that he attended it, and he chose not to speak during the ceremony. And while talking about the funeral, he noted that Troyer, who died at 49, wasn't diagnosed, or when he was born, they didn't expect him to live past his teens. And then he noted that you saw 150 years worth of life in his photo montage that they showed at the funeral. The only other information I had about any sort of service is a celebration of his life was held at 2 p.m. on Friday, June 29th, 2018 at the Grace Christian Fellowship Church in Sturgis, Michigan, with a visitation from 1 p.m. until the time of the service. He was a huge supporter of the Starkey Foundation and Best Buddies. Best Buddies was an organization for people with developmental disabilities, and the Starkey Hearing Foundation was a mission to give the gift of hearing to those in need, empowering them to achieve their potential. So the cemetery in St. Joseph's County, Michigan, at the Leonidas Cemetery, and Verne is buried in the very back, and we were able to pay our respects. We've arrived at our destination, the last stop before Michigan, before we end up being finished with the trip. Well, thankfully we made it before dark, and we're in Michigan to pay my respects to a little guy who I'm a fan of, who I got to meet once, and the last thing I want to see on this trip is right here. The last person I want to see on this trip is right here. And it's Mr. Verne Troyer, aka Mini-Me from Austin Powers. Now, unfortunately, because of the sun is being in the place that it's in right now, it's kind of hard to get a good shot of it, but this is Verne Troyer's grave, 1969 to 2018. Died in Van Nuys, California. And I didn't know this until last night, was raised Amish. So, I've been waiting to do this for years, to come to see Verne's grave, and it's unfortunate that the sun is the way it is. But as you see, there's some tributes here. People have left things for him, but they haven't left one of these. So, as a tribute to Verne Troyer, I have my Mini-Me here. And here. There he is. And you know what's even weirder? As if I'm not weird enough. That statue, which took me a long time to find, came with this. And if you push the button, back to the sex tape thing, and it was in 2008, so it was 10 years before he died, and he was with a woman named Renee Schreider, and at the Viceroy L'Hermitage Hotel in Beverly Hills, which is just down the street from where Paris Hilton's sex tape was filmed. And this woman, she says that Verne Troyer asked her to star in this video, this sex video, and she felt guilty and felt obligated to do it. Right. And then she said that, she gave details about it. Verne was watching TV. I ran to the bath, emptied a bottle of bubbles into it, and called him in. But the bubbles were so thick and high that once he climbed in, he got lost under the water, and I couldn't see him. Verne's voice is just like it is in the films. And as he disappeared under the water, I heard his tiny yelp for help. I could just hear him crying, "Renee, I can't see. Get me out. I'm drowning." I was frantic and started to scoop up the bobbles, but I couldn't find him. The bath was only 3 feet deep, but for someone Verne's size, it was like he had fallen into the deep end of a swimming pool, and he can't swim. I put my hand under and eventually felt his bald head and hauled him out. Gross. I couldn't believe I tried to do something sexy and ended up almost killing him. He looked like a drowned rat. Classy. For a small guy, he's quite well, she's discussing his private parts. I had no complaints, but the whole thing was over in 3 minutes. It was strange having relations with someone who couldn't reach to kiss me at the same time, except for my tummy. What a pig. So she released a sex tape. Isn't that lovely? That night we made love through. Anyway. So, but yeah, Verne Troyer, fatal level of alcohol in his system, and his cause of death on his death certificate, sequelae of alcohol intoxication, self-inflicted, alcohol intake. And that's that. Verne Troyer, mini-me. Out of pain now, and he just seemed like a decent guy. Seemed like a nice guy, troubled, but a decent guy. So yeah, rest in peace.
You heard me.